until we can deal with the issues of life, until we show ourselves the kings and the queens of the world, the prince and the princesses of the Most High. How can we tell the world we can save the world and you haven't saved yourself yet? If you're going to muddy yourself up with a divorce and go out and say, now I can tell you how to live together, they say, yeah, you sure can, old messer. And they don't tell you all to your face that they say to your back. How many already knew that? 5 or 6 of you. The rest of you will find it out early enough in life. What people say to your face and what they say to the back is 2 different colors. Dark colors. Today we're going to deal with the problem of how do you cope with human failure? Well, seeing that most people have failed, it's a good subject. And so let's get into it. Now, I can tell you one thing. You may have failed, but you don't have to fail. And you may be failing, but you don't have to fail in the future. You're responsible for your own failures. So get that down in your crawl and let's get started at it right. Stop blaming it on your mother-in-law and get down and find out you're to blame for it and get busy with it. Went over great, didn't it? I don't know whether you're awake or not. Anyway. Open your Bibles to Genesis chapter 1. Let's begin at the first and work on it from there. Genesis chapter 1 verse 26 says, God said, that's the Elohim, the Creator, the Mighty One. And God said, let us make man in our image and after our likeness. We're made in the same image of God, which means same height and same stature, so forth. And likeness of God. God only has one nose, only has 2 ears. And in the likeness of God, how many believe what I'm reading? Okay. And he says, after we have made man in our own image and own likeness, give them dominion. Say dominion. Dominion. Say it again. Dominion. Why don't you have it? Oh, you said, that's Adam. No, that's you. God is the same God right now as he was 6,000 years ago. 6,000 years is not that much in eternity. And let them have dominion. Where? On planet Earth. Over all the fish of the sea, all the whales belong to you. Only one problem, you have to catch them. You have to get their attention. That's your problem, you hadn't gone whaling yet. Over all the fish of the sea, over all the fowl of the air. How many knows all the birds belong to you? Yeah. All the birds belong to you. You do have to go after them, though. Over all the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. If it moves, it's yours. Just watch it. If it moves, you'll say, you're mine. God said so. So God created man in his own likeness, his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created him them. So man was not created for failure. Let's say that together. Man was not created for failure. Let's say this. Failure comes from the devil. And I hate the devil. And I will not fail because I hate the devil. All right. Man was not created for failure. Man was created to have dominion. You should put a circle around that little word in the middle of that sentence. That's the beginning of the Bible. That's the first chapter, you see. You go right back to the last chapter of the Bible and you're still a king, so God didn't release it at all. Nowhere in there. You say, Brother Sumrall, what is failure? Failure is a thing or a person that does not succeed. That is failure. So failure is the opposite of success. Anyone has failed who has not succeeded. What is failure? Failure is a lack of something necessary to make a success. Something's lacking. Could be brains. Could be money. Could be strength. Could be love. Failure is never built upon supply. Failure is built upon the lack of supply. So where there's failure, there is a lack. You might say insufficient resources. Now, it could be right on the inside of you. It could be initiative. But failure is an insufficient situation in resources. What is failure? Failure is falling short. That you thought you had the two ends meeting and then somebody moved an end. And they weren't meeting anymore. Falling short is failure. I almost made it, but you didn't make it. Failure is a default. You were supposed to hand it over, but you defaulted. You didn't hand it over. Whether it's preaching, whether it's witnessing, whether it's your business, whether it's your marriage. Failure is default. Failure could be a loss of strength. Strength not only in your arms or legs, but strength in your mind. Strength in your desire. Strength in your doggedness to say, I refuse this thing. A loss of strength. That means you couldn't lift life's burdens. They got too heavy for you. Then you find somebody to carry them for you. I've always told my sons in business, you're not supposed to do everything. You're not supposed to be sharp about everything. You're not supposed to know how to do everything. But you're supposed to have enough sense to hire people that do know how to do it. Are you here or not? A lot of people's problems is they're trying to do 12 men's work when you'll be a lot smarter if you give 12 men a job and let them do your work. You play a little golf. What is failure? It's a loss of strength. You didn't have the vitamins in there to carry you right straight through. What is failure? It's a loss of power. If you're driving your car and your engine fails, you've lost power and you don't go over the hill. You just don't go. It can be the same in your business. You lost the fireworks you had one time. It could be the same in your church attendance. You lost the zeal that God had in your heart. You're a spiritual failure. To children in school, a failure is not to pass. In business, it's becoming bankrupt. In the family, it's divorce. That is a failure. Don't ever go around cocky. It's a failure. To abandon your companion and to destroy a home, messing up parents and grandparents and children and grandchildren. You ought to try to have a wedding if you've been married about 3 times and see where you're going to fit each mother-in-law at. Then the preacher goes through hell trying to get your family inside of a building and out without them smearing their fist in each other's face. Then you think you're smart. How does failure come about anyway? If God created us to have dominion, why do we fall down on it? Man, let's get after it now. Number 1, failure is actually the result of transgression. Failure and transgression are twins. Somewhere, somebody's done something wrong, or you don't have failure. So failure is only related to missing the mark and not doing what one should have done. In the case of Adam, his failure and losing the billionaire experience of being the head of the Garden of Eden Incorporated and losing the managership of that amazing place where angels obeyed him every day was rebellion. Often, failure has to do with a rebellious spirit inside. You won't humble yourself. Some men won't listen to their wives when she has an intuitive spirit that God gave her that knows that sucker you're working with is a thief. You find it out after you're broke. I thought that'd go over good. The men in my life that deceived me, my wife knew it before I did and said, be careful of that person. And when I didn't do it, then I had to suffer for it. Judas failed. He did not fail because Jesus was bad. He did not fail because there was no money in the kitty. He failed because inside of him he lusted for that which wasn't his, for gold. And he sold himself for it. So the beginning of failure is a negative, not a positive. Men don't fail walking the positive road. Number two, a failure comes about because we don't observe the facts of the project we're working on, whether it's a business or whether it's a family or whether it's a job or whether it's an education. Jesus said in the Bible, in Luke chapter 14 and verse 28, that we should count the cost before building, or we might suffer failure. He said, for which of you, intending to build a tower, sitteth not down first? Say first. Well, you've been doing it last, you see. After you couldn't pay for it, you said, I better count on this. Too late to count. You're already in it. And counteth the cost, whether he have sufficient to finish it. The next line says, verse 29, lest haply, after he hath laid the foundation, yeah, you can always get the first part done easy, and is not able to finish it, all that behold it began to mock him. All that behold him. It's real nasty to have your friends laugh at you. How many have found that out? Yeah, I know all about it. Verse 30 says, they mock him, saying, this man began to build and is not able to finish. You just start something and don't finish, and your best friends will mock you till you're back. Can you carry through with a good wedding, with a good family? Can you carry through with your business you're in? Can you carry through with your education that you're seeking to attain? I've got a sermon that's called, I Didn't Quit. And I take you whole through my whole life, from the time I was a boy. It showed you that I have never quit anything. When the going gets rough, I get mad and do twice as good. And I start looking for the enemy, and if the devil, I kick him out immediately. But I'm not a loser. You say, you know better than us. I know it. Why don't you start saying the same thing then? You're going to be a loser as long as you confess being one. All the people said. So number two is not observing the facts of the project. Whatever you get into, before you get into it, don't get excited and go into it. Get cold and go into it. Check it out in every detail. So many people got into trouble jumping into things they didn't know anything about. And nowadays they blame it on the Lord. The Lord told me to do it. Honey, God hadn't said a word. That's just you talking out of your own self. Boy, you're responsive this morning, aren't you? I'm glad you're still here. I have to look up to know it. All right, number three. How does failure come to a person? By doing the right thing at the wrong time. Now you can imagine the people that make a business deal. It's the right thing, but the timing wasn't right. And they knew it. They found it out later. The thing they bought was 20% reduced in just a few days. And they didn't take time to study it out and think it out, and they got caught in the thing. Even marriage. You can fall in love with a person and say, hey, I want to marry you. But wait a minute. Get out and learn a trade first. Be able to make a living first. Why drag somebody else through hell? And that might be the end of your whole love affair by privation of not being able to take care of somebody. Everybody still here? It is possible to do the right thing at the wrong time. I could have come to pastor this church at the wrong time. You see, the right thing, wrong time. Let's know God's time. When, you know, especially young people, they get so edgy, you know. You want me to tell you the greatest truth in the world? How many like to hear the greatest truth in the world? Well, I'll tell you. Jesus sat in Nazareth and did nothing for 30 years. Oh, you fast-moving guys. And every day the devil said, you won't make it. You're getting so old. You can't make it. How you going to save the world squatting here in this town? He says, I'll make it. I'll save the world, and it's none of your business. But we always want to jump up, you know. I got to do something. You better pray first. That'll help you. Am I doing all right? I just wanted to know. Whatever you do, get your timing right. God has a time. There was David. David was anointed king when he was 17. He got chased by every dirty, filthy giant in the whole area until he was 30. Till he was 30. Now you know what you'd have done. When you were 17, you'd have got you a gun and started looking for Saul to kill him so you could get on that throne. So you rascal, you. You don't do that. God has a timing. And if you live by God's timing, you'll be happy. Am I doing all right? The big one, I guess, is this. We quit too soon. When we have success in our hands, we quit too soon. I've often thought, and when you go to Florida, be sure to go to Thomas Edison's house. See his laboratory. Walk through it slowly. Listen carefully. Buy the little book and read it. Those light bulbs that you see up there that he created. He failed by his own counting 10,000 times he failed. No, he didn't fail at all. He just worked on them 10,000 times before they worked like he wanted them to work, you see. But he didn't quit. So many millions of people would be successful if they just wouldn't quit. I tell every young preacher in America, if you will just keep moving even a little bit in the right direction, you are a success. It's only when you quit that you're a failure. And that goes for homes and marriages and everything else. Don't quit. If Henry Ford had quit, you wouldn't have a Ford automobile that you rode to church in today. He didn't quit. He just stuck in there. A few years ago, the name more famous than any other for batting in baseball was Babe Ruth. The younger generation may not know much about him, but a number of years ago, he was very famous. What they don't know about Babe Ruth is this. He fanned out more than any living baseball player. Are you here? He was not only the home run slugger, he also fanned out more than anybody else that ever went to the base. You say, what was his success? Keep going back to that bat. Grinding his teeth and say, I'm going to hit it this time. I found out last time and the time before that, but I'm coming back and I'm going to hit that thing. He was determined to hit it. And he just kept doing that till he had knocked more home runs than anybody else in his lifetime. And you will too. You'll knock some home runs if you won't quit. How many believe that? What does failure do to a person? Is it like having the hiccups, or is it like having a bad cold? What will failure do for a person? Failure can affect your mind, no matter how keen you are. Now, I have met men that had one time been governors of states, and men that had been congressmen, and they were so dull you didn't want to talk to them. You say, why? They failed and could not get back into office, and their mind became listless and not willing to fight back. And they're hardly worth talking to. I've met preachers with the same problem. They just hit a hard place and they quit, and when they did, something happened inside of them. Their mind didn't leap up and grow with new ideas, with new vitality. Failure can affect your way of thinking. Don't let it do it. And don't blame somebody else. You're the one that brings the victory to your own life. Failure almost always hits the emotions. I guess always. Failure always hits the emotions. It produces a gloomy attitude. You can almost close your eyes and listen to a man speak and tell whether he's failed somewhere along the line or not. You say, why? That voice of his catches right on to that thing and carries it. And you let a guy that just won $1 million talk, and that old boy sounds like a girl. His voice is so high. He's riding in high C. You see? If you're a salesman, you'd do well to go in front of a looking glass. Number one, look at your mug and see what people have to look at. They're not going to buy something from somebody that looks like that. You're going to have to 3 steps at least up, and then say something and listen to it. And so that wouldn't sell a thing in the world. That wouldn't sell gold bars for a dime a piece. And so check yourself out. I tell preachers to do that. I say to young preachers, get in front of a mirror, look at yourself and talk out loud, and then say, would I want to listen to that? You might be amazed at what people have to listen to. Anyway, failure affects the emotions. Don't let it get to you in there. Let your emotions be full of faith, full of power, full of strength, full of joy in Jesus' name. Failure often affects your stamina, that you just sit down. You can't win sitting down. You win running. And if you don't have enough power to run by yourself, grab a hold of somebody else that's going fast and hold on, ride with them. Ride somebody else's success wagon. There are a lot of people glad to have company, so ride along with them. You say, Brother Sumrall, how do you cope with failure? In my world of thinking, psychologists might tell you one thing, but they may be a failure themselves. You know, you can make $1 million as a banker, but if your home falls to pieces, you're a failure. You see. And so we want success, not in one department of our lives. We want a whole life of success. You know, we want total success. And we won't be satisfied with anything less than total success. And almost behind every brilliant man that's up there in business, he's lost his family. And he thought he had to. That is a lie. You do not. Most of the stuff you do today, you've forgotten tomorrow what you did, and so it wasn't worth anything. You better just get essentials done and give priorities where they belong. And a lot of it belongs to your family. How do you cope with failure? In our thinking, first is to seek divine guidance. Ask God about it. God loves you. God made you. And God cares for you. Start with God. How many think that one's all right? All right. And when you start with God, you seek a supernatural assistance. Ask for supernatural assistance. Not natural, supernatural. I mean big stuff. And don't stay down on a human level. Move up a little above it and say, hey, I want something just a little stronger than that. I'm tired of 110. I'm taking on 220. And going up to 440. Glory be to God. I know you ladies don't know what I'm talking about. Anyway, seek to learn the facts. Don't be stumbling around and not knowing what you're doing. Many times people just think they have failed when actually they have not even failed yet. They just think they've failed. Seek to know the absolute truth of just where you are. And then just don't quit. Just plug away and fight away. And when everybody else says quit, says, I'm just getting started. Get out of my way before you get hurt. Philippians 4:12 says, I know how to be abased and how to abound. Now these are the words of Paul. And he knew what it was to hit on a rocky island on the rocks. But he didn't stay on the rocks. He got up and went aboard and began to bless all those people and help them there. In Acts 28:8 it says, it came to pass that The father of Publius lay sick of a fever and of a body flux, to whom Paul entered in and prayed and laid his hands on him and healed him. So when this was done, others also which had diseases in the island came and were healed, who also honored us with many honors. And when we departed, they laden us with such things as was necessary. Well, he just hit on the rocks. His boat went to pieces. Well, that's where you would have quit, you see. Man, he didn't. He just started over again there. First thing you know, he had all the goodies on the whole island in his own hands. Needed a boat to get him off the island from all the goodies he'd picked up. When something don't seem right, do something else. If Bendy closes, start your own business better than theirs. Don't stand around and grunt and growl about it. They've been here long enough. Just say, bless God, we want something better anyway. Are you here? Yeah. It's your attitude toward life, what God wants. Joseph knew how to do his best, even in jail. They put him in jail, Genesis 41. Pharaoh said to Joseph, see, I have set thee over the whole land of Egypt. He came out of jail to get that job. Yeah, he came out of jail to get that job. And Pharaoh took off his ring, put it on his hand, and arrayed him in a vesture of fine linen, put a gold chain around his neck. But he was in jail an hour before that. And made him to ride in the second chariot. That's Air Force 2, not Air Force 1. Which he had, and they cried before him, bow the knee, and they made him ruler over all the land. You say, why? He was a winner. If he'd have come out of there, I've been in jail 9 years and I didn't do anything bad, he never would have had anything. He came out there saying, I know, I've got the answer. This nation needs me. And they did. And this nation needs every one of us. It needs us. It needs every one of us. And we will not be defeated by the devil. None of us will be defeated by the devil. Get your insides changed. And let's walk 10 foot tall on the inside.